I'm going to try to do something tricky here. I have to hold my power cable into my phone. So I'm going to have to, this is the first time I've done this. I'm going to have to hold the cord into the phone while I make a video. So if I seem to be doing, if you see stuff like this, that's what that's about. Where's my drink? I don't have my drink. Oh, it's over here. Autogynephilia, or feminine dick. What is autogynephilia? Why am I even talking about this? It's because I've seen people use autogynephilia as an argument against trans. It's not. There's really not an explanation for the argument that I've seen. Really, it's just kind of like there's no such thing as trans. They're just men who are autogynephilic. So that's kind of the argument. It doesn't really. It's not really an argument, you know. Kind of. I mean, there's no steps in logic from one point to the other, right? It's just a kind of alternate theory, I guess, that but doesn't explain the things that a trans person experiences, except for one. So autogynephilia is a Greek term. You know, this one of these scientific terms typically are Latin or Greek, and this one means auto is self, gyna is woman, and philia is love. So autogynephilia literally means self-woman love, but it refers to a man seeing himself as a woman and loving what he sees, but more specifically, it means that he's sexually aroused at seeing himself look like a woman. No, so I guess there is an actual argument there, because the argument is that, well, it's not really an argument against trans, but it is an argument against kind of the idea of being sexually aroused at the sight of yourself as a woman, of a man's self as a woman. And the argument basically is that a trans woman is essentially a man who either can't get laid or whatever, and this needs to see a woman in order to get aroused. So he dresses up as a woman, and seeing himself as a woman, because somehow this is better than just, say, watching porn, he gets aroused, and this enables him to masturbate or whatever. That he is essentially the object of his own desire. That he sees himself and he sees someone he wants sex with, and this is what makes him aroused. Now, I have experienced this sexual arousal that comes from seeing myself as a woman. It happens quite often. And I'm not going to say it's difficult to explain, but at first it didn't really make sense to me. I think the first time I ever experienced it, I was very young. I was like maybe 11 or 12 years old. And my brothers and I my parents had just left. They weren't actually my parents. It was my father and his wife, my stepmother. But they had left, so my brothers and I went into their room. And we're going through the wife's clothes and trying on bras and things like that. So I put on a bra, stuffed it with water balloons, and then put on a shirt over top of that. And when I looked down and I saw myself with breasts, I suddenly felt just like super aroused. I mean, when I say super aroused, I just mean more aroused than I'd ever been. And it didn't make sense to me. It didn't. When that happened, I was kind of like, the idea that, is it just the boobs that arouse? Am I just aroused by breasts? Is that all it was? And not seeing breast is what turned me on, or was it seeing me with breasts that turned me on? At that age, I wasn't sure. Uh, I don't remember the first time I had the cow fantasy. I maybe should make a video where I just do the cow fantasy so I can reference it in videos like this one, so I can say go back and watch the video about the cow fantasy. I don't, because I know I've talked about it in one video, but I don't remember what video it was. But the cow fantasy was one that I had in which I was a cow. Right, this was something I used to fantasize about over and over and over again when I would lay in bed, at night when it was time to go to sleep, and would fantasize. I would picture this. I would see this barn area, small barn about the size of a house, small house, I guess. I never went into the barn actually. I don't know what was inside of it, but around the barn was this fenced-in area that was heavily trampled. Like it was mostly just mud and cow manure, and there were a bunch of cows in this circular thing around the barn. In the fantasy, I wasn't just a cow. I was a female cow. But what turned me on about the fantasy was fantasizing that I had this big, huge udder between my legs, because the udder is a female organ. So I didn't fantasize about having a vagina. I fantasized about having the udder, and I never fantasized about being penetrated by another cow. I didn't even think about having a vagina. What I thought about was the udder. But I remember thinking, because the udder is essentially in the place of the dick, right? The cow's udder is where the bull's dick is. They basically hang from the same spot, approximately, right? And so because I remember wondering, like, why would I prefer that over the seeing myself as a bull? But it was the idea that it was feminine. It was a feminine organ, which is what made it arousing to me. So in the fantasy, I would plop through the mudded manure area, and my hooves would be just covered with shit. And they'd just be filthy, and I would just climb up on the back of another cow, mounting them like I was a bull, but then I would just press the udder up against their backside. And this was one of the most arousing things that I could think of. And I was probably 12, 13 maybe. I don't remember how old I was when I started thinking about the cows, but it was around the same time that I had this cross-dressing experience where I saw myself with breasts. So that was my first, what I think of as my first specific incident or experience with the idea of a feminine dick. But I didn't do anything with that for years. I didn't dress up in women's clothing to masturbate or anything like that. And for me, when I first started cross-dressing, it had nothing to do with sex. It had to do with the identity crisis that I was in, the years of feeling like my life was wasted, that my life was pointless, that I had too much potential that was just being squandered. And a few other things that eventually led me to try cross-dressing, to try on women's clothing, makeup, wigs, and things like that. And one of the things that I noticed, the very first I don't want to call it the first time, but it was the first real time, or the first like full-bodied time, right? The first time that I put on a wig, makeup, dress, women's shoes. I mean, just from head to toe, made myself look like a woman. And when I looked in the mirror and I saw myself looking like a woman, one of the things that I experienced then was this relaxation. So, now I can finally breathe, kind of feeling, and then that went down to my groin, and it almost immediately started to feel blood flowing into my dick, my penis, and I started to feel aroused, but not only aroused, I started to feel like now I'm finally ready for sex. And because before, one of the things that I didn't mention, that one of the things that made me try out the trans thing in the first place, or the cross-dressing thing anyways, was sex related, which was that I didn't have a good sex life, that I struggled with anxiety and just feeling like things just aren't right when I'm like, if I was with a woman, even if I was with a man, I often felt just uncomfortable and like things just aren't something wrong. There's something wrong with this picture that makes me almost not even want to do it. It's like I got to the point where I just realized, or I felt like it's not even worth the trouble to find someone to have sex with, because this feeling of just being dissatisfied and uh, feeling like I'm doing something wrong, or whatever you want to call it, just made it feel like it's not worthwhile to even just find a person. Uh, so yeah, so that was part of what compelled me to try it out, cross dressing. And so when I tried it, and then I had that feeling that I feel ready for sex. Now I feel like this was the problem, is what I felt like, that the problem was that I was having sex as a man, when something inside me wanted to have sex as a woman. So this is already one of the reasons why I don't really buy into the autogynephilia thing as an argument against trans. So I experienced that my first time. I had that experience of being sexually aroused, but there was that feeling of, well, this is how I need to be in order to have sex, and in order for it to be proper and enjoyable, this is what I needed. But I wasn't convinced of that right away, and it took. So that was almost 10 years ago, and I've been on hormones now for 2 years and 4 months, 2 years and 5 months. I do believe it's been over 2 years and 4 months at least. And I have experiences now where when I see my body, my body is very feminized at the moment. A lot of times I look at my legs and they look like a woman's legs, or I do have breasts, you know. Sometimes I'll be sitting on the couch if I'm naked. I'll be sitting on the couch and I'll look down and I'll see like my butt kind of spread out, almost not in a, as a man my butt was kind of firm, but now it's more squishy. So when I sit down, I get this kind of ballooning kind of thing that happens. That when I see it and I see my feminine legs, I feel this kind of like I'm ready for sex feeling. But then also what happened, what made me think that essentially what I have is a feminine dick. What made me think that was that once I started going through this, what is a feminine dick? I've explained autogynephilia at least a little bit, but feminine dick for me basically just means that my dick works best, or the way that it's supposed to, or the way that for me, at least, I haven't had sex since I started the hormones. I have not even looked for a sexual partner. But what it means is basically that I need to feel feminine in order for my sexual function to function properly. Uh, that is that's what I mean by it. And but that it, at first I wasn't convinced, and I would have experiences where I would get like erections that were unlike what I'd had before. I just mean that they felt more solid. They felt the orgasms were better. Uh, the whole experience of masturbating was better. Often it was more more relaxing than it had ever been. Uh, in the past, say before hormones, before even the trans thing, if I masturbated, my brain would get noisier. Like I would start just thinking about 1,000 different things. Kind of, I felt almost like I had to engineer my steps through the masturbation process, almost like I'm just thinking my way through the whole thing. But now I more often have the experience where my brain goes quiet. And it's like I start to hear noises like the cars passing down the road outside, or the birds chirping, or whatever. All these things just become more noticeable because my brain is just, the volume is turned way down. And so this is, when I have experiences like that, I think in order to have sex, I need to see myself as a woman or just feel feminine. Now it is difficult to explain what I mean to feel feminine, but that is one of the things that accompanies this. Like a lot of times, if I look in the mirror when I masturbate, which now I only look in the mirror when I masturbate, because seeing myself look like a woman changes how I feel, right? So it's a what was I going to say? I already forgot what I was going to say. But that was also a change, because before I started this, I never looked in the mirror when I masturbated. I typically would say that even with sex, I didn't want to see myself, and I say that because I had a friend who used to talk about how he wanted to see himself. He said that he wanted to put a mirror over his bed so that he could see himself when he was having sex. And I remember saying to him, this was years ago, that I would just as soon have sex with the lights off. I don't want to see myself when I masturbate. I don't want to look in the mirror. I don't want to see myself when I masturbate. Why is that? Does the fact that I don't want to see myself when I have sex, or that I didn't want to see myself, might that have anything to do with why I found sex so dissatisfying? So this is the idea that I'm getting at. Is that for me to see myself feminine, to see myself like a woman, contributes to my sexual arousal in a way it's unlike what I experience if I just look at a woman and I think of myself as a man. Like in the past, I might watch porn to masturbate. I might look at a Playboy or something like that, and I would feel aroused looking at a naked woman. But now, what I feel is not it's completely, I shouldn't say completely different, but it's not the same feeling. There is more of a feeling now. I shouldn't even call it a feeling, because more now there is more of the fantasy aspect of it, where in the past I didn't even think about having sex with a woman I was masturbating to. So if I looked at Playboy, I didn't think of myself having sex with the woman in the Playboy. But now I do. Now I could be watching porn, and if I see a man having sex with a very feminine woman, like very curvaceous, curvy, voluptuous woman, and a lot of times what will happen, or what I've tried at least, is that I'll think of myself as her, and I'll start to feel aroused that way. And I imagine that I'm her, and I'll start to feel aroused, and I'll start to get an erection that is better than what I used to get. But then what happens is I start to imagine that I am having sex with her, and that the sex that I'm having with her is better than what the guy is giving her. And I'm thinking she should be having sex with me, not with him. And but there is this awareness, this sense of whatever you want to call it, that it is a feminine dick in the fantasy. That if I try to picture myself as a man, it doesn't work. It's like this isn't the right. I don't know. It's not the right mode. All right. I feel like I'm getting to the point where I'm beating a dead horse a little bit. So I think I'll just stop there.